Well, hello everybody. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that I didn't get the show number right on the titles, but also the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed a short statement there in tribute for Mr. Dominic Hawken. I think we're going to just open straight up with this because we can't not, really. Obviously, very sad news that Dom passed away on the 6th of February with his family after a short illness. He just got nobbled by pancreatic cancer, which, as we know, can do for you in a matter of weeks, and it really was very, very fast, but still, you know, it's hard to know what to say, really. I mean, you know, without using colourful language, I mean, Dom was a really unique and special guy. I don't think there's anybody really who would say that, you know, he wasn't a really kind, warm-hearted individual. I mean, also incredibly modest. I mean, I don't think many people knew. I mean, the headlines, we know, you know, he wrote a Christmas hit. I mean, who as a musician would not want to be one of those people? That is kind of a fantastic achievement in itself. Secondly, we also have, you know, he created all sorts of other startups. He was a serial entrepreneur. There's some really, I found a video out there where he was talking to a bunch of guys and gals in a kind of startup business symposium and just telling them about how to do stuff. He started a secure data facility in a nuclear bunker that he raised money to buy. He created some code that was then as a part of a digital agency that was sold to William Hill for masses of money, and he was able to kind of step back. I mean, he just did loads of things, and he was very, very modest. I guess I'm kind of a bit flown because I haven't introduced any guests, I haven't said anything like that, but this sort of transcends all of that, I guess, and we're kind of, I knew this was going to be me rambling and perhaps not being as clear, but I know for lots of people out there, not only that, he was a great podcaster. He did a fantastic Sunday night show, which was really sort of family orientated. His wife, Sophia, Mrs. Wigley, and Lula May were on it, and, you know, they raised loads of money for charity. Also did a Wednesday night podcast for mental health. I mean, really, a polymath, I think, would not be an unreasonable term to use when it comes to Dom. Just a very all-round guy, and it's just incredibly sad news. I'll quickly say hello to our guests. So we've got Paulie Bow here from Magical Synth Adventure, and also Mr. Rich Hilton. I'll get to bigger introductions later on. Rich, we haven't seen Rich for ages. It's lovely to see you, even though it's a kind of sad day to have you on. In many ways, you know, we can be positive that there's so much to celebrate with Dom. I mean, he was sort of terrifyingly good at everything and really kind and had plenty of time. Most people that I've spoken to have said, oh, he always, you know, he helped me, he did this, he did that, he did so much stuff for people. Before we get into what you guys may have thought of it, I know Dom, Gaz was really wanted to send a video. He couldn't be here today, obviously, but he wanted to send a little message in, so I'll play that first and then we can get on to everybody else's thoughts about it.
Hello everybody, sorry I'm not on the show today. I'm going to be en route to France when the show goes out, but I wanted to say a few words in tribute to the wonderful late Mr. Dominic Hawken. Like many of us, all of us, I guess, this is just such a shock and it's very difficult to process. Somebody who was so much larger than life, a lovely soul, bursting full of positivity and encouragement, quite unlike anyone I've ever met, and I think a good example of his amazingness was at the last Sonicstate live appearance, where in the middle of this amazing performance he read out like an essay on asylum seeking, like with so much heart and so much connection to fundamental human goodness, you know, and I think that's what he was fantastic for. And through his own live streams and of course appearing on Sonicstate, the only stuff you ever got from Dom was the good stuff. Love you, Dom, gonna miss you terribly, and obviously big love to your family. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gaz. I mean, I think that sums up a lot of it. I mean, it's going to be a bit tough. I realise this. I know many of us. I mean, even though I've been working with Dom for 3 years, I only met him three times in total. One was at Synthsy, where I performed. Another one was at the EMOM and 4 times. Another one was at Tile Yard, and the other one was at Super Booth when he came last year, and was so incredibly helpful and generous with his time. I know, Rich, you managed to meet him as well. I think, did you meet him at Kent's? Was that right? When you came to the UK, you got to meet Dom.
Yeah. Well, last summer, as you know, when I'm on the road, I try to connect with my friends. And last year, you and I and Andy and Gaz had a nice day out in Bristol when I was there. And at one point when I was in London, I messaged Dom and I said, I'm here and I've got a little time off and it might be nice for us to go and hang out together and visit Kent. And how did you feel about that? And he loved the idea. And so I made my way to the train station and I made a train down to near where Dom lives, and Dom picked me up and we drove up to Epsom to see Kent. And we spent the day playing with Kent and the dogs and visiting Kent's famous garage and having just the time of our lives. And Fiona was the consummate host, and this time. And we had a great time, and I took pictures and the dogs, and it was just everybody just being normal human beings. And it wasn't so much about, music or synths or, anything about our lives necessarily. It was just us enjoying each other for a few hours. And then at some point later in the afternoon, we got back into Dom's car and went to the Hawken estate, which is gorgeous and impressive and really just beautifully, tastefully done, and just a great home. And I'm telling you this so slowly because I cherish this, and it's as close as I'm ever going to get to Dom. But we had such a wonderful day and evening, and they prepared a wonderful dinner, and I went upstairs and I saw the studio from where he does the wiggly stuff and everything else, and which, by the way, is in the attic. I don't know if people realize that studio is upstairs.
No, I didn't know that.
It's not in the basement. It's not on the ground floor. It's way upstairs in what would have been an attic conversion in any house here, except it's pretty sprawling in his house. And that horn, that crazy wiggly horn he used to play whenever anybody would contribute, that was like incredibly loud, and you can see it stuffed with like tissue paper and everything. And it was a day that I cherished at that moment. And it's a day I cherish 100 times more now because of what a prince of a man Dominic Hawken was, and what a huge heart, what a tremendously creative mind, how agile he was mentally, and how open his heart was to everybody he contacted, and how much he touched everybody's lives and brushed it off like water on a duck's back. It wasn't something he even acknowledged doing, even as he did it. And I don't think humans get much better than that. And I'm trying not to cry, but I'm gonna miss our friend terribly, because he was just one of the really good ones.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I will. I can totally agree. Yeah, we knew this was going to be tough. I mean, it is. Like we said, it's incredibly sad. This is something that everybody who met him just kind of went, "Wow, what a great guy." My partner and her friend, they were doing the DAW, and they spent an evening in his company, basically at the EMOM, and because I told them that he'd had a hand in Stay Another Day, and they were like, "Oh wow!" and they were quizzing him about it, and he was totally up for it, and just really, they said, "Oh, what a nice guy," and it's like, I mean, usually my synth, the side of my life that is synths and the side of my life that is my personal life don't sort of cross over all that much in terms of family, but he bridged that totally with Jane and Jill. It was really nice. Anyway, I know that, did you get to meet him at you must have met him at Synthfest. Yeah, of course. Yeah. That was a great show.
Was it the Soma?
Yes, that's right. Soma Synths,
which he did amazingly at, by the way. He was just so enthusiastic. I wonder how many interesting people he sold them to that day, because he was so enthusiastic about the instruments and explaining them to people and stuff like that. So my thoughts on Dom and I've only got my one story, of course. And when the interesting thing is when someone passes on, you get to hear all these other little stories. Do you know what I mean? And they
absolutely.
they kind of build up a big picture, and hopefully mine will kind of fit with everyone else's. When I initially met Dom online, and this is going back maybe 10 years,
Oh,
I was not a particularly likable person. What I mean by that is, it wasn't really my fault. I mean, I had autism and complex PTSD from bullying, but there were lots of really rough edges to my personality. You know, I was quite jealous. I was quite reactive. And on the forums around that time, I mean, I was releasing music. I was, you know, people loved the music I was doing, but I wasn't, you know, I didn't have the personableness that I do now. And yet he just kind of broke through all of that. He just saw that I was clearly someone who was talented but troubled. So he spent quite a lot of time. I've got like old private messages, you know, and stuff like that are probably on a server somewhere that I need to go and find. You know, just telling me such nice things about myself and how talented I was and stuff like that. And I hear that he did this a lot with people, tried to build them up. You know, made a concerted effort to try and build people up. Sorry, I'm not speaking into my microphone properly. I've just got this discombobulated.
yeah. Yeah, obviously.
So the final thing is, so he was actually able to be that lovely to someone who was ostensibly quite a handful, which shows me and see my humanity beneath that kind of, you know, veneer of anger or whatever, which I think is incredible. I mean, I work in mental health now. I kind of turn my life around and help other people, and I know that he helped a lot of other people via his smashed podcast, because it was a bit of a safe place for people to talk about these things, and potentially with the bigger number of males in the synth community, a place for males to talk about this stuff, because statistically males find it harder to access support and help, because it's not in the kind of bringing up and socializing as much. So the final thing is, we met and he was just so thrilled to finally meet me. It was like I was like Marilyn Monroe or something, do you know what I mean? He was absolutely thrilled. He was like, I'm so glad I finally got to meet you. And he just made me feel absolutely amazing about myself. He said, you know, I was feeling a bit nervous and feeling a bit self-conscious, and he was like, no, you were amazing on the day. You were beautiful. You talked to people. Just well done. Because he knows I kind of struggle in social situations sometimes. And that's it, really. That's my story about Dom. I hope it was relevant.
That's great. Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Everything is relevant. I think the thing is he, yeah, well said, Paulie. I mean, I think everybody or many people have similar kind of quite deep connections, and he did just sort of bring that out. There's been a lot of talk about his performance, and this is a very special moment which I've just got to play, because this gives us the quote. It doesn't really sum Dom up, but it's one of Dom's many great bits. This is from our EMOM.
Call that a kick drum? That ain't no kick drum. No. That's no kick drum. That's a kick drum.
I've told the story about this before because I was at the side of the stage with the sound guy, and I thought he was talking to us, that we had to kind of somehow, the monitoring wasn't right or whatever it was, we were kind of going, oh, I know, check the gain, and then when it came in, it absolutely blew the room apart, which was probably the desired effect, but he did it in such an elegant way. Yeah, it was a fantastic, that's just one of many reminders. I mean, I suppose in many ways, I feel, the things I wish I'd done, I wish I'd gone up to visit him in his house, I wish we'd gone fishing together, there's all those things. But so if there's any lessons to be learned, make sure you do those things when you get the opportunity, because you never know when you might not. And I think that's kind of important, an important lesson in life, really. And one that's really easy to overlook because we're all, weighed down with responsibilities and kind of, worries and all that stuff. And we think, oh, I can't do that, it's going to be too difficult. Just try and do it, because you might miss that moment with somebody like Dom, that you can't have again. So anyway, right. I think we should probably. I'm going to do something really crass now and play an ad, because I think we all need a moment. OZone 10 is the future of mastering. The new version includes Master Assistant, match your master to any reference file or files. Also, the Stabilizer module in Advanced adds clarity with intelligent and adaptive mastering EQ. Also included is the Impact module in Advanced, which enhances the rhythm by controlling microdynamics. Don't forget the code SONIC10 at iZotope.com/Sonictalk to save an additional 10% off any software purchase, not including subscriptions. Yes. Okay, how's everybody doing? Are we okay to carry on? I knew it was going to be like this. I just didn't know how it was going to go.
Yeah,
so
right.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your contributions. And I'm sure everybody, in the chat will have similar things to discuss. So.
Hey, Nick, can I just jump on your point for a second about the opportunities?
Yeah.
I know this is going to sound incredibly obvious, but I just want to say it anyway. There's two aspects to that. One is recognizing them. And that is really the key, is recognizing them as they present to you in life. And then the second is acting on them and taking the initiative where needed to make the thing happen that may not happen if you don't. And that's something he was really good at, and it's something I try to be good at, and I'm very thankful for all of the meetings I have with my friends from here, including our lunch, Nick, and the day that I'm going to meet Paulie sometime, and all of our friends in the chat room. I mean, this is what it is. This is what it is about. It's about the people. As I've told you a million times, Nick, everybody has topics. It's about the people. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that again.
No, I think very well said, and much appreciated. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, speaking of topics, I suppose I should try and get it together and make a show. So, okay, let's see how we go with. I don't know. Let's try something. This will be interesting, or maybe it won't.
Hello, I am Anna Maria, and I'm an Overtone singer, and I'm going to tell you something about polyphonic singing today. Overtone singing is a voice technique where one person sings two notes at the same time.
Oh my. She's a living high-pass filter. That's Anna Maria Hefele.
Sing-song harmonics.
They were definitely sing-song harmonics, weren't they? This isn't really about music technology so much, but there's some interesting kind of concept, because this is something that, our mouths are able to produce all kinds of interesting and exciting tones, and she can do that. I mean, I think we first heard of this sort of technique, which was perhaps less about the overtone, undertone, the fundamental, more about the overtone, with the throat singers used by the KLF, and also Kama, which was the Tuvans of Mongolia. I have actually got a little clip of that, and it's just that this lady is just kind of doing her own thing and kind of developed a technique. You can actually learn stuff from her as well if you wish. I wondered whether anybody had ever tried. I mean, I've tried that thing with whistling where you could, if you whistle and sing at the same time, and you can when you whistle, if you do it in the right way, you can add harmonics to a whistle. I can't do it with my voice. Right. I just wondered if anybody had done any of that. I know, Paulie, you sing, so you know why. I'm not asking for a demonstration or anything, unless you happen to be a virtuoso.
No, I can't whistle. You know, that's interesting.
Really?
I play about 10 instruments, but I can't whistle. How about that? It's clearly I've overcompensated, haven't I, for not being able to naturally whistle. But no, I can't actually do much overtone stuff. I know it's the shape of the vocal cavity that acts as your kind of almost bandpass filter kind of thing. I can kind of do it on a low note, which I did the other week. I think I kind of demonstrated a sort of you know, kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, maybe I should learn.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Sort of thing one could, wouldn't you? Sorry, Paulie, carry on.
It's only useful if your song's in like a dominant 7, isn't it? That's just a little joke.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Well,
you can always change the note, you know. But
that's right. That's what she does. She can sing both and create intervals between. I think the thing that I find it quite hard to differentiate, just purely because the kind of Mongolian school uses a much lower fundamental, so the difference between the fundamental and the harmonic is more obvious, I suppose, and there's a clear sort of pitch differentiation. I know, Rich, I'm just wondering, I don't know if you have to, do you sing as part of Chic? Have you ever thought of throwing in a bit of overtone polyphonic singing when the backing vocal is required, just to keep them on their toes?
Just to keep
Can
them
you
on
imagine?
their toes? The short answer to that question is no. I had watched all of her videos a few years ago because I am absolutely blown away by the fact that she can control it to that degree, because I've known people who can sing multiple pitches at the same time, and I'm going to tell you about them. But I've never seen anybody who can run the harmonic series with such a high degree of control in the way that she approaches it. There's nothing random about it at all. She's completely got it within her technique to do, and that's something I've never seen before. So yes, I've heard Tuvon's throat singers, and in fact, when I was working around the corner at the studio from Peter Vitesi, who you guys might know, who's a synthesist and a keyboardist and has played with a million people, he was studying Tuvon throat singing and would occasionally demonstrate it for us, which was incredible because that's just such a courageous thing to do anyway. And then I know of 2 professional singers that I've worked with or around that are able to sing multiple pitches in sort of more like what a saxophonist does in the high register when they play multiphonics. And there's plenty of examples of that on saxophone. But my friend Dan Reed, who used to have a band called the Dan Reed Network and is now a successful solo artist and visual painting artist as well, and lives in Prague, can do this. He can't run harmonics like that, or at least I've never heard him run harmonics like that, but he can sing multiple pitches at will. And it's a pretty stunning thing when you see somebody who can even control that much of it. And then there's a very famous African-American singer from the U.S. named Layla Hathaway, who I believe is the daughter of Donny Hathaway, although I'm not 100% sure of that. And she's a magnificent singer and a lovely person, and she can do that. And she does it on stage, like pretty much all the time, you know, at every show. And again, it's a different presentation than this nice lady had, but it's a really impactful thing when you hear somebody do that. So that's my multiphonics stories. But this woman, I have never heard anybody do what she can do.
Nice. Sorry, I'm somewhat distracted because my control software that shows me the the whole thing just crashed. So I missed about the last 10 seconds of what you said because I
Oh, it
couldn't
was
see or
very
hear
interesting.
anything. I know it was, but I'll have to watch. I'll have to watch it back a bit later. I don't know what's going on. This hasn't happened before. It's most frustrating. I will check out those singers though. That sounds pretty good. Again, this was just I suppose I'm tossing it in there as a sort of slightly lighter topic compared to our previous one because it just sort of feels like we need. It's like a amuse-bouche, shall we say, just to kind of get us back on track. But yeah, anyway, well worth checking.
Nick, if I also may say, the great thing about singing and the thing we all love about singing, and especially choral singing and group singing, is the fact that we all breathe together. And there's such a power and energy in us all breathing together. It really brings us together in a way that I believe words can't. And of course, singing is one of the rare instances in our lives and in music where we are the vibration. We're not contacting the vibration. We're not initiating the vibration. We're not in the same room as the vibration. We are the vibration. And I think that's very important.
I agree. Well, I know, Paulie, you do music as part of the kind of the stuff you do for mental health. And I know that the workshops that Anna Maria does, the photographs anyway, it looks like there are a lot of people all doing that in the room at the same time, which must be kind of pretty amazing. You know, you've got 6 people there, that's 12 note polyphony you got right there, you know. So I mean, it must be quite an interesting experience. And there's a really good video of her as well, if you search her out, singing a solo piece in a room full of this kind of hanging resonant tubes. It's a very curious one. It's a cracking video. Worth having one of those kind of YouTube rabbit hole moments with Anna Maria stuff. Definitely. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, well, we're going to go straight back for the... let's see, yeah, let's just do this one. Why not? This is Underrated Synths. Oh, I got to do this. This is... most underrated. This is with Gear News. This is by Adam Douglas, and it's very much a listicle thing. It seems like everybody's doing listicle stuff at the moment, but you know, you just can't. It's hard to. Do I press that? That should go into the chat room. Is it there? Yeah. Well, or it's not. Oh, never mind. Oh, yeah, there it goes. This is, Adam Douglas. He's got kind of 5 most underrated synths. You may or may not agree with some of those. I must say, I do agree massively with the IK Uno Synth Pro. I think that is a fantastic instrument. And I always forget. I don't know why. I always think, I'm looking for something that can just get... It's a 4-voice paraphonic, but it's got really great effects and some fantastic... patching capabilities, really nice and interesting sounding filter. Blofeld, some good calls in there. Op6, which we've got an Op6, I would agree with that. I'm not sure. The JDXA, definitely not. I thought that was a donkey. And then there's a few other ones. I just wondered whether there were any other. I mean, I don't mind saying that because I did say it at the time. The JDXA, I will say, because the reason it was is because it had an analog filter and a digital engine. The sum of the parts, you know, the JD whatever the XI or the JD whatever it was, the small one, that was really good because they didn't screw up the filter. There was something happened in the construction that the gain staging was all wrong in the JDXA. So the only way that the filter wouldn't distort crazy amounts of distortion was by turning down the oscillators into it so much that it got really noisy. And so you couldn't get any decent filter. You know, the filter was almost unusable, in my opinion, anyway. So, cool. I know, Paulie. I'm sure you've probably got a whole house full of underrated synthesizers, right?
Probably. The JDXA is an interesting one because I think some of the parts in it are amazing. So, for instance,
I would agree.
It's basically got a Zen core engine, pretty similar to the stuff that's in the 101 and MC707, which is pretty cool. It's got actually quite a nice sounding analog part, but then these niggly things like the gloss plastic finish that they didn't sort out straight away. The piano black gloss finish. That's a great idea. Where it's something you're going to put your fingers all over, isn't it? That gain staging on the 3rd analog filter, and finally, I don't think it's easy to transpose the sequencer. I think you can use the arpeggiator and transpose that, but I think the sequencer you can only use the bender to transpose, and I think these things kind of put people off.
Yeah, as they should.
People off a bit. I think I'd probably grab one cheap now because I've enjoyed the 101. But I think it's an almost hit kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? They just got a few things not quite right. The System 8 came out, and although it's VA, it seemed to do a lot
different
better.
Story. That's a great instrument. I would agree. I think the System 8 is a great sounding synthesizer in its own right. That's why. The thing about the System 8 is it doesn't need the models because the actual basic. I mean, again, one LFO, very disappointing. But you know, it's not the end of the world. It's still kind of pretty. Some of those filters were fantastic. But yeah.
Regarding the other ones, though, I'm not entirely sure if they're underrated, as such. I think everyone kind of knows that Op6 is a pretty good FM synth for a decent price. You know, I think the Behringer analog stuff is quite well regarded for cheap kind of, you know, mono synths and stuff. So I don't know about underrated for those.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's I think maybe the Blofeld is quite underrated because I reviewed the Mark II, or there were different iterations, and I was really surprised at how great just the sawtooth into that filter sounded. It was like, oh, that's lovely, that's really nice. Rich, you must have there are so many synths to choose from that are underrated or perhaps underappreciated, perhaps maybe a better way of putting it. I don't know.
I could easily come up with 10 that are overappreciated. But before I go there, of these 5, let's see. The Uno I've never contacted, but I do know people who really speak very highly of and enjoy using. And I don't even know if IK had anything to do with designing it, but it's theirs. And as Paulie pointed out, the Op6 is pretty widely regarded as a nice FM alternative for people who want to get a current FM synthesizer and want to be able to operate it without a degree in physics. So that worked out well. And the XA, the Roland. Okay, we've toured with one of these things for a number of years. And as great points as have been made about its architecture and the things that are good and bad about that architecture, it is an early Zencore kind of introduction into what has now become a much deeper integration in this instrument next to me called the Phantom. But I wish any of that was its biggest problem. Its biggest problem is the physical construction of the thing. It's just not very robust. It will fall apart. If you try to tour with it, it will break. And we have 2 of them, and we know this from experience.
Have you got the XA or the XI? The little one or the big?
It's the little one. I think it's the little one.
Yeah, the little
but
one.
They're basically built out of the same stuff. I mean, if you look at them, they're not terribly high-end construction builds to me. The Behringer product, as odd as it may be, interested me only because I didn't realize they'd done an MS-20. I think the fact that it fits into a Eurorack is magnificent as far as a design consideration, because if I had a Eurorack system, I kind of like the idea of using synthesizers that are known next to other things as part of the palette that you use to create these colors. And I think especially one with as many patch points as is on the MS-20 design could prove to be very useful for certain things. In a year, you basically get a lot for the money in that kind of rack configuration. So I kind of like that.
Yeah.
And thank you, Wagyu, for the clarification about the JDXI in the chat room.
XI, that was it.
Yeah, so underrated synths. I think FM has gone through a period in general of being underrated. People got real, parochial about how analog. Analog became the buzzword after digital was the buzzword for a few decades. And so FM didn't really resonate, if you'll pardon the pun, with any of that. I've always really liked FM for what it does well, which is what it does in the mid-range more than anything else, and in high frequencies, and with attack characteristics. So you can get some very unique percussive or even textural things and great mid-range things that are fun to use and distort, and I find they distort really well, FM synths. And so in general, I think FM kind of has gotten short shrift for a while, and I think the Op6 helped kind of bring it back into favor to some extent. And other than that, I don't really have a list of underrated. I mean, there's,
No.
the stuff I didn't want back then hasn't really, for the most part, gained any particular cachet with me now, even though
Does anyone remember the Fizmo? Do you remember that got absolutely
Yes, of course.
I never put my hands on that
Yes.
one. The Ensoniq Fizmo, and yet people are now sort of saying, "Oh, I really like the Fizmo." I hear it, and I don't know whether I mean I can't say. I don't know anything about it. I just remember it being really sort of pilloried and not really appreciated. Was it any good? Has anyone played one?
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paulie.
I haven't played a Fizmo, but I've played an Ensoniq MR rack with the same sample ROM as the Fizmo.
Right.
And there were some quite interesting, what we call trans waves on it. It's not political, they're just wavetables. and basically some of the sweeps are really unique, actually. But at its core, it is pretty much kind of a wavetable synth with quite a bit of modulation and stuff. I've got myself, I wouldn't mind one, I've got a VFX SD up here, and also I've got an EPS 16 Plus, so if anyone really hates the Fizmo and wants to get rid of it, just send it my way, and it can join its sisters in my studio.
I wonder how many were made of that, because it was a sort of when it came out. I can't remember if was it.
It's
was
the
there a lot of them
instrument that
around?
took down the company. It was literally
right.
that and Paris, and we'll always have Paris, took down the company, basically.
Oh yeah, Paris. Was that the DAW? Was Paris or the
Paris
NLE
was their,
for audio?
their Windows-based DAW, yeah, or MS-DOS.
Didn't it have hardware though?
Yes, there were cards.
Remember, but yeah,
there were cards. But the reason why I remember all this is because we had a rather active relationship with Ensoniq through the time my early years with Nile Rodgers, starting in 1988. We did signature series libraries for them. We had an endorsement, so I was using their gear constantly from the EPS onwards. As far as transwaves go, the first appearance of transwaves in an Ensoniq product was the VFX, which had certain other flaws in it, mostly in the sequencer. But you've got one?
Yeah, I've
You've
got one.
one?
VFX SD2.
Yeah, well, okay.
nice.
Just in the middle.
All of the things after the first VFX up through the TS series had transwaves that were modulatable. And
Yes.
they were fun to use. I used to really enjoy programming patches using their transwave tables and being able to modulate them, even just subtly, gave your patch so
Yes.
much more animation and life. So the Fizmo was an attempt to bring physical modeling, if it's not obvious by the title, into the mainstream with a hardware instrument. Fizmo relates to physical modeling, and it was not
I
a
feel
successful.
so dumb. I didn't get that until just now.
It was not a very successful instrument for them. In fact, one could argue it took down the company along with Paris. And I played it once, and it seemed to work. It was on a sales floor, which is a really horrible place to learn an instrument. And I really loved Ensoniq, and I really loved what they were trying to do. I loved the fact that they were burning their own damn system chips on site and stuff. They were actually, like manufacturing stuff outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Weren't they? Were they? Did they have a hookup with Creative? Was that why you were seeing the hardware?
Ultimately,
stuff? Was
they
that
were.
the-
I think the first buyer was Creative, who took some card, or they did something with them. I think they were initially purchased by Creative,
Right.
as they disintegrated.
Yeah,
Was it
okay,
Emu
'cause
and
they
then
had-
Creative, maybe?
Yeah,
think
I
they were
can't.
too.
Maybe.
So,
Yeah, I think you're right. And they did do some. Yeah, there were some in Sonic sound cards, weren't there, and sound devices that evolved into Paris. Anyway, that's probably for another topic. But yeah, no. Anyway, it's a great article, well worth checking out.
I've got one
you got
underrated
another-
synth, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just
Yes,
one.
please do.
It's really odd. Some people are starting to clock on now that it's quite unique for certain digitally pads and stuff, and it's called the Technics WSA1. And it's another early physical modelling synth from about 1995. And it's got
Very
two
highly
big...
thought of.
Yeah, it's got two sort of... People who know about it, but the rest of everyone else is just like, oh, it's just some kind of rompler or something like that. Honestly, what it does is really unique kind of wood knocked sounds or very sort of resonant pipe structure pads and things like that. And it's one of my secret weapons, basically. When I put one of the sounds in a song, people are like, what's that weird instrument, you know? And it's always the WSA one.
Nice.
Cool.
No, good shout. Good shout. There's a couple in the chat room as well. I'm just trying to see if I can find it before I. Ian J. Cole says the modal sculpt and sculpt I see are underrated. I would agree. I think the sculpt sounds really good. It's actually very digital, and for sort of early digital, it's quite an interesting machine because even though it's not quite chip tunes, but it's got quite a grit to it, but it's still got it's got a really interesting distortion and filter modeling, and I think it's what the Cobalt and the I forget the other one now, the Argon came out of, where they've sort of upgraded their the hardware around it, and so there's a lot of good stuff in there, and they're probably dirt cheap. I mean, underrated, but also quite fiddly to use. But I think that was physically what compromised it, because it looks like a plastic box.
How about Morpheus for an underrated synthesizer?
I've got a Morpheus. I love it.
Yeah. Well, it's not
amazing.
underrated at Paulie's house.
No.
Is that in Sonic
The thing
as well?
is, that's
No,
EMU.
it's EMU. Yeah.
EMU. Okay.
It's got about
Tell us.
300 odd different filters.
Yeah.
You have to program it with a wallpaper your hall looking through a letterbox style programming, but
yeah.
Absolutely love that. If you can get to the point where you just get a wave and try the different filters, is really, really good. If you can get one, for your rack for cheap, and there's some decent editors.
That's it. Yeah, it's the D110's life, isn't it? It's basically multi-timbral as well.
What was their series that had that though? The Proteus. It's really built on the Proteus architecture. And I liked Paulie's words for it. I call it the hole in the fence at the construction site. So you walk up and you stick your eye in the hole, and there's this giant expanse out behind it.
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're working with in one of these synths with a display this big and a million parameters behind it.
That's right, and the system exclusive and stuff is so laggy that you can't really write an editor for it, because it can't cope with the bandwidth of controlling parameters.
There's a hilarious Morpheus demo on YouTube, like a corporate kind of EMU demo of the Morpheus.
Okay.
With the most excited demonstrator I've ever seen, just going through it, and it's so 90s, and it's amazing. So please, please everyone watch that, because it's so charming.
We'll have to check that out. I better just have a word from our friends over at Baby Audio as well, because they're back for the rest of the year, which is very kind. Baby Audio makes creative effects plugins designed to add colour and depth to your mixes. They won Plugin of the Year 2021 in Future Music and Computer Music Magazine, and were nominated for the SOS Awards 2 years in a row. Why not check out Smooth Operator, a resonance suppression, equalisation and compression plugin that automatically eliminates resonances and muddiness. Oops, what's happened here? It automatically eliminates resonances in the background. Get 15% off when checking out with the code ST15. Oh dear, I'm having a bad tech day today. Yes, Baby Audio, thank you very much for supporting us. Check out with the code ST15 to save 15%, that's the thing. I've spent the week fiddling around with my M2 Mac Mini to try and make everything back up, and now I've got a tiny little super powerful little box under the desk that takes the database and all our code and everything. It took me weeks to figure it out, but now everything else is breaking and I don't understand why. I haven't been fiddling with this yet. Anyway, what else have we got? Let's see. I'm sure we have. Oh wow, it's hard to know where to go, whether to go for the 4-track Porter Studio emulator or the which is the best DAW. What do you think? Well, I think that we'd probably get both, couldn't we?
Both. Yeah, you can get both in the next 15 minutes.
Okay, let's go for this then. So this is again another gear news topic, which is by Stefan. I can't quite make that out, actually. I should probably make that a bit bigger. Which is the best DAW for your style of music? Which is actually an interesting proposition. I mean, as a question, you know, it's not an unreasonable question. I mean, there's a lot of parity between DAWs in terms of features. It's just a question of how maybe you get to them. What's nearer the surface? I mean, like, say, if you're into sort of jamming and looping, then you might go for Ableton. But then Logic has similar kind of functionality built into it and has a whole bunch of other things besides. So it's quite hard to know which one you would go for. I'm having to connect again.
Yep.
There we go. Sorry about that. I just lost my connection halfway through that. I don't know if I was still there.
We heard you.
So
we heard
yeah,
you.
for instance, I mean, I use Reaper for some things because it's just less hassle in many ways. Very simple stuff. I used to use Logic for a long time, and I use Ableton. Those are the sort of three that I would play with. In terms of other ones, I generally don't get involved because I don't have the patience to learn the nuance of them, and I'm not doing it every day. So it kind of feels like, well, there's only so much room. It's like the Homer Simpson thing, isn't it, where he has to learn something new for work, and he's always sort of goes, "Oh no, that means I'm going to have to I'll have to forget something to make room for this new stuff." And I kind of work like that a little bit. I know, Rich. I mean, you. Obviously, you know, in a professional environment, you work with whatever is given to you, so you must have a more than passable knowledge of many DAWs. But if somebody's starting out, what would you recommend to them, and what would be the factors that would inform that advice? Do you think? I suppose is another way of looking at it.
I would tell them it doesn't
Big question.
matter because it doesn't matter, and the question is the problem. Because everything out there that we've discussed and are about to discuss is plenty good enough to not be the limiting factor in your ability to make something good. So it doesn't matter. Learn them all because they're all good and they'll all take you in different directions, and don't be down to one. The whole idea of the question bothers me because it's suggest. And in fact, at the end, they had a clickable thing about which DAW do you use, and you couldn't select multiple ones. There you have the problem. The problem right there is it because by manipulating the artist, the consumer, the customer, whatever, into thinking that it matters, you try to sell based on a feature set that they don't even know what you're talking about when they're starting out. So the truth is, it doesn't matter. They're all really, really good. What do I use? I use, let's see, what's in front of me right now? Studio One, Ableton, Pro Tools, Melodyne. I've used all of them. Digital Pro, I could use Performer. They all push me in different directions, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Yeah. So there you go. I would tell them it doesn't matter. Pick one and just get started.
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, the only thing I would say is it depends. If they don't have any sound sources, I might suggest, maybe going with...
They all come with sound sources. They all come with tremendous libraries full of loops and instruments, and they all come with perfectly The best thing about switching them up, actually, is that each one usually has a synth that the other ones don't have that does something cool. So whether it's Studio One or Logic or Ableton or no matter, I mean, we're going to talk about an Ableton topic anyway, but there's just so much they're all so feature rich at this point that it's an embarrassment of riches, and this is not the limiting factor in your ability to do stuff.
Yeah, and let's not forget GarageBand, of course, which is the entry
even
drug
that.
of many, of choice of many. Paulie, what I don't know what you use. I don't think I've ever asked. It feels like a personal question, but I suppose
It is
it's
a
not.
personal question. Before I go into DAWs, can I just mention one thing I remembered? We were talking about the Morpheus synth and it being a bit difficult to use. And I think Dave Rossum has since made Eurorack module version of the filters in that. So if you want to kind of explore Z-plane filtering...
Z-plane filtering, yeah.
I think, well, it's American, it'll be Z-plane, won't it? Then that's probably a better route to go if you don't like menu diving. But DAWs, interesting, really. If I'm doing something loop-based, I'll go back to my Amiga days and use a tracker. And I'll get a few loops together. Because there's some very quick commands in them for sample start offset. And it's all kind of in hexadecimal code. It's not very easy to pick up, but... if you know it, it's very quick to do kind of glitchy kind of loop manipulation. It's just like, it's something I've been doing since I was about 14, so it's very natural to me. But if I'm doing like a more linear song, say I've already written a song and I want to record it, I use Cubase. Cubase has been my love since about 2001, 2002. And it everything is where I know where it is, and sometimes I'll be doing it's great as well because it very easily exports MIDI files, because some artists I've worked with, like there was an industrial band called Decrups I wrote a song for. They want to do all their own sound design, so I just sent them a MIDI file of some parts in the song. And on Cubase, it's like super easy to just do that because it's linear. Finally, I would like to give some love to Reaper as well, because I've got a separate little mastering rig that I have Reaper on that I use with various, different headphones and speakers and things like that, so I can check my mix in a variety of... check my master in a variety of circumstances. So I use Reaper for that, and
Do you use the native plugins, or have you got plugins that you run across it, or is it more just a play-out system?
I've got some like mastering plugins and things like that were installed like years ago on it. So I don't know where the CDs are, so I best find them if I ever want to, upgrade that Mac. But again, I think the point is, if you find something that works for you, maybe you should stick with it. Or, of course, you can switch it up if you want something new and be pushed in a different direction. But perhaps upgrading for the sake of upgrade's sake might not always be the, in terms of versions, I've got some quite old versions of Cubase here, and with some quite old plugins that I know I can get certain results from, so I don't necessarily think upgrading is always the way. But of course,
Right.
I'm kind of niche because I have old computers with all different versions of Windows on, and Amigas and old Macs and a ZX Spectrum, so not everyone's quite as hardcore as me into digital preservation of old operating systems, but
I think
if it works, stick with it.
Yeah, I think the starting out thing is key. I mean, but what is quite terrible, because the thing is, it's fine if you're just noodling around, you can try different things and see how it fits you. It's when you've got a job or a deadline or something that you have to use the tool to get the thing done by the next morning or the next night or whatever. That's when you have to kind of be disciplined and go, well, I'm not going to spend half the day messing around trying to figure out how to route my MIDI. I'll just stick with what I know, because I know I can figure out a way around it, even if it's not the ideal thing. I mean, I started out, like many people, on Cubase. I started out on Pro 24, then I went to Cubase on Atari. And then when Logic started to be a thing, I went to that because everybody was kind of raving. It was a sort of paradigm shift in the concept of a DAW. So everybody sort of jumped to it, and it sort of
Sure.
stuck with a lot of people and became a composition. A composition environment of choice, and for many it still is. I mean, no doubt partly because when you Apple are subsidizing it now, and you get a whole lot of stuff that you probably wouldn't be getting for the same dollar in other DAWs. I mean, that's neither here nor there, because I mean, you do in Ableton as well. So they kind of set the bar to a degree with what you get for the money. And I suppose you get the same sort of thing with GarageBand, and that's that route through. They want to keep you on the Mac. Obviously, the whole thing is a sales channel. But,
Yeah.
so it's like the lost leader to a degree to get creatives involved in their hardware. But now if I was going to, I'm just trying to think, where would I go? I think I'd be more comfortable doing a project in Logic, because it would come back to me. And I'd remember I was
Sure.
using Logic for maybe 15, 20 years every day
Muscle
in
memory.
production. So, yeah, so muscle memory. And I go, I know that there was a way to do this. But to be honest, I did a mix with, when I was working on that Moog ensemble thing in the church, which was just 10 Moogs. I worked with the guy Silas, who did the sound at our last EMOM, and he was getting stuff out of Logic. I didn't even know that it did that stuff. I didn't know that there was playlisting. I didn't know that you could separate the arrangement from the mixer pages, and he was so fast, and I just thought, I'm so far behind. Maybe I should just get someone else to drive, really, and worry about it if I'm just going to write in it, and that's it. I just couldn't. There were so many features in there that I just thought, wow, I really have no idea what's going on. And I suppose, to begin with, I would recommend something that had the least amount of friction. If you're advising someone who really doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't, they're not really going to want to get involved in the nuts and bolts of it at this stage. They just want to make some music. I would probably say something like GarageBand, because it's just
GarageBand.
I just kind of plug it, just so you can write in it. Maybe. But the rest, it's because as soon as you start involving MIDI, people get really confused, I think. I don't know, Rich, you look like you might have
It depends on their level of musical expertise
exactly.
coming into the thing, and how much they actually want to physically play into it and sequence normal MIDI, and how much they want to actually sort of montage a bunch of musical content that's part of what's provided. And that's why I say they all provide giant amounts of musical content now, so that they can make it available to people who don't otherwise have, shall we say, playing skills on 10 instruments, like our friend Paulie, for example. So for those people,
doesn't it make you sick?
No, I think it's fantastic. Not at all, not in the least. I embrace the idea of picking up instruments and getting good on them. I love that, and that's why I love this thing.
Yeah,
because I had to learn all over again how to play, and I love that.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair point. I suppose that's a slight.
But everybody's not.
I suppose
like
the thing is that
So
no, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave the questions for this week. I know that we haven't had many in, but there are a few coming in. We do have some in the background. But once again, I just want to say thanks, you guys, for sharing your memories of Dom, and everybody in the chat room for your memories. And I hope we can all celebrate his life, and I think there's going to be some kind of event in the UK in March, which I will definitely be going to. But we'll also have our EMOM. I forgot even to plug that, actually, but I suppose it seems a little bit inappropriate. But we will actually, let me just quickly, while I'm there, I will throw up the EMOM link, which is this one. And if you want to go, we'll be performing, 7 people will be performing on the 11th of March, Saturday the 11th of March, and it'll be a kind of a tribute to Dom as well. But if you want to go, the details are on the screen now, bit.ly/Sonic EMOM 2. Tickets are only a £5. Trying to get them sold in advance so we know what sort of numbers we're dealing with, so they can figure out how many people put on the bar, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, Paulie, how's have you nearly done with your soundtrack? You said you were getting heavy onto that the last week. Have you made progress?
Oh, definitely. We've got so many of the tracks for Arcade Dreams done now, and he sent me Zach, the director, sent me a rough cut of episode 1, and it's all the shots of, you know, different arcade games panning across, you know, in dark rooms, and my music playing, and I got proper, you know, goosebumps. So I was like, oh, thank goodness, you know, that it worked, because I didn't do it in the standard way a composer would, you know. You get some footage and score to it. No, it was more, let's just do vibes. So sometimes we just talk in YouTube videos, me and the director, or just send me like 2 or 3 YouTube videos and goes something like this, you know. They could be anything, like a Michael Jackson song or blah blah blah, and I'll go away and get those vibes and put them in, and then he just slots them in where they might fit, and it's thankfully worked. So I'm very happy about that.
Oh, that's
so,
great.
Yeah, great. And Baby Fen's doing very well as well.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. You've got a show tonight as well, aren't you? On another show tonight, you're doing
yes,
a thing with Rob, Molten Music Technology. You're debating whether the 80s ruined the music, right?
Yeah. Did the 80s kill pop music? How clickbaity is that title? It's incredible.
Well, we've all got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can probably guess what side I'm gonna come down on. Being an 80s baby and being in a room full of synths, it's probably likely that I'm gonna say no, it didn't. But I've got some interesting points and things like that. We'll talk about sampling, and maybe we'll talk a bit about how productions became more a bit of a one-man or one-person band, you know. Some productions, because one person in the studio could enable the entire track, and was it better when you had a load of musicians there vibing and going this guitar part or something like that, you know? Was it, you know?
Well, let's not forget Prince, Sign of the Times, the album Sign of the Times by Prince was an 80s album, which was very enabling for a lot of people when they heard and the story that surrounded, because it was basically him doing it with machines, or at least that was the story of the PR that went with it. So everybody felt really kind of enabled, thought, you know what, I can get a computer, I can do it with MIDI in my little 4-track. There was, certainly in the UK, there was definitely a kind of, it felt like a watershed moment. But anyway, that's what time is that, Paulie? 7 o'clock?
7 p.m. Yeah.
Okay, on Robin's channel, if you check out Molten Music Technology on YouTube. And Rich, what are you up to now? Have you got you out on the road at all, or are you having a bit of a quiet time while the while I am while what?
No, well, I have aside from some personal things that are going on with my family, and I have this new instrument next to me called the Phantom 8 by Roland, and I'm preparing it for use in our coming tours, and that is taking up a lot of my attention and energy because it's a ridiculously deep instrument with gobs and gobs and gobs of features, and I want to make sure I'm using it to enhance our show as best I can. So and included among that is Zencore synths and on front panel, enveloping and filter controls that really do give a very convincing simulation of operating an actual synthesizer, which is remarkable at the extent to which it actually and sounds great. It really does sound fantastic. So a lot of work going into this. I've got my new Equator 2 that I continue to play regularly. I've got my relatively new D'Angelico guitar behind me that I continue to play regularly. I've got a few little project I've got to do for Nile Rodgers in the next coming week or two, and then we will start hitting the road. And when we hit the road this year, it's going to be intense. I'm going to be gone for most of the rest of the year, starting from about May. There are going to be a lot of down and backs at first, and then there's going to be a month tour in the U.S. with Duran Duran. Then there's going to be about a month and a half in the UK and Europe through July and August. And then we're going to be out for another month with Duran Duran in the fall. And I can hardly wait to see what comes after all of that. So I'm just
Please tell Nick Rhodes he's my idol.
Oh, yeah? Nick is my buddy. I love Nick Rhodes.
Great. He's amazing.
He is. He's just a great guy, and I love him dearly. And I I will see him and mention that to him.
Oh, amazing.
Cool. Well,
Speaking
hopefully
of
we'll
guys
see you,
who use
Richard.
Roland JDXI and JDXA or whatever the other one was that we were talking about. He uses a lot of that stuff on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I
So
think
I'll
the
be
question
around
came
this,
in once.
this summer. We should hopefully
right, brilliant.
have the opportunity to
Yeah.
get together. And if I'm going to try to make Dom's memorial. We'll see if we can do that.
Oh, wow, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
all
it
right.
means a
Well,
lot
thank
to
you,
me.
everybody. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, all the folks in the chat room. Sorry, I was a little bit discombobulated this week, but, you know, it's inevitable, really. But once again, thank you very much. We'll be back next week, and have a great time. See you later. Bye-bye.